Deal breaker. Being clingy was the top deal breaker for men, while bad hygiene was the biggest deal breaker for women. What does it mean? It is something that would cause a person to abandon a plan, an agreement, or a relationship. It is a factor or issue which, if unresolved during negotiations, would cause one party to withdraw from a deal. Simply an aspect, condition, or item that would not be accepted. Let's look at some examples. If a partner won't accept your friends or family, that's usually a deal breaker in a relationship. Fringe benefits are now seen as an important part of any salary package, and base salary is no longer viewed as a deal breaker. Prior to committing to a partnership, the corporation needs to have a clear vision of deal breakers versus where they are willing to be flexible. Sorry, but entering into a marriage with a partner who has hefty debt or terrible credit is definitely a deal breaker. Being completely honest with someone, being able to mess up and know that's not a deal breaker is such a relief. The lamb does not fully detach from the band, and so be mindful if that's a deal breaker. The issues now holding up the mission should not be deal breakers, the source adds. Obviously, in a romantic relationship, loyalty is definitely a deal breaker for me, but it's also important in friendships. The saddle isn't the most comfortable, but that's certainly not a deal breaker. That's hardly a deal breaker, but on a night flight, there are other key advantages. That would obviously be a deal breaker, but they adore him. Wiser heads foresaw so long ago that the Prime Minister was a deal breaker. Voting reform would be one of the main policies put before the two parties, but it would not necessarily be a deal breaker. The display is disappointing, but not necessarily a deal breaker, unless your job consists of editing photos and videos. The least important deal breaker for women was not being good looking. If he says he doesn't want to move, then you need to decide whether it's a deal breaker for you. We'd prefer the valuation points were all similar, but it's not a deal breaker. I really like the device, but the deal breaker for me was that it only worked with a projector.